More bad news for men in Australia, where the efforts to strip them of their rights continues. Right. Of course, there they are, the female feminist in parliament with her gay male bootleg. Oh my God. And what are they going to do? Well, we'll find out. I'm going to debunk this horseshit.
And speaking of problematic men, the Australian state of Victoria has found a unique way to tackle them.
Wow, that's really neutral. Talk about problematic men. This is from the United States, so don't pretend that these guys are any better than the Australians, right? There are problematic men out there, and this is how we tackle them. The KKK says, there are problematic black men, and we got to teach them how to behave. This guy would have a totally different tune for that, wouldn't he?
Appointed a minister to improve men's behavior, which is the country's first ever such position. But not many Australians are happy with the announcement, as they
don't say. It's like you saying, hey, the KKK want to tell black men how to behave. I'm not that happy with it. God.
They believe this new position actually demonizes men. Australia is currently struggling, however.
Yeah, like the KKK actually demonizes black men like me. Strange how some of us think that.
With an epidemic of gender-based violence, with 31 women being killed since the beginning of this year.
Gender-based violence. That's euphemism for women who get hurt, and therefore it's time to demonize men over it, right? Now, I've typed in here how many men were killed in Australia last year. Of course, they don't give any sex. They don't say how many men were, right? But they tell you how many women were. So use your brains, right? 377 men were murdered, right? And only 60 were women last year. So if murder's a problem, men suffer it, right? Matter of fact, 9 of these women were killed by other women, right? So it's not gender-based at all. None, right? So, the overall murders are small anyway in the size of the country of Australia. The population's big enough, right? But again, the vast majority of men, right? And how many of those men weren't murdered by women, right? So all those stats are left out. So you see, they're just using these stats again. And this is always the same thing. I have a video talking about how women of Britain, England, tried to make a 6 o'clock curfew for men. And now here it is happening in Australia. This is worldwide.
Our next report goes inside the creation of this new ministry and how the nation is in fact responding.
Now look at this, guys. See all those women in the streets and all their male bootlackeys. There's men in here, coming in here. I don't know why they all seem to be wearing hats. And sunglasses. It's like they don't want to say who they are. But I mean, there's men going down, they may as well be on a conveyor belt to a meat grinder, right? I'm scared that's a lie. That's a lie.
With incidents of violence against women increasing day by day, Australia has...
Day by day. Well, that's not a lie, is it?
...found a unique way to tackle the crisis.
They said 31 since this year, right? Now, last year, it was 60. This half of year is 31. So it's about the same, actually.
In the country's first, the state of Victoria has appointed a special official who will be responsible with improving men's behaviour. Victoria Premier Jacinta Allen has announced that a local member of parliament
There they are again. There's the man hater and her man hating gay bootlackey, right?
Tim Richardson would hold the role of parliamentary secretary
Gay men are some of the worst man haters out there.
for men's behaviour change. The state is governed by the Australian Labor Party, which deems itself a progressive force for women.
Translation? It's a regressive movement against men. That's what it is. These people are not progressive in any way. They're totally the opposite.
Now, Richardson has acknowledged that
Women actually don't have any real issues. That's why they can't be positive and say this, we are for this. They are only regressive towards men, so they're negative to society.
the work will not be easy. He says he will focus largely on how the internet affects men's attitudes towards
There you go. So what he's going to do is they're going to shut down the internet for men. This is more lockdown on internet porn for men. They don't say that, but that's what's going on here.
women and how they can build respectful relationships. Richardson adds, and I quote, "We
That's
know
what I want. Relationship advice from a gay man.
that the time to act on men's violence against women is now, and it starts with us men and boys. We must make Victoria a safer
And boys, right? They go right for the children. Helpless little boys who haven't done anything to anybody. What a monster. Don't be fooled by that stupid grin on his face. This is a monster. You attack children, you're the lowest.
place for women and children and work to end the tragedy of deaths of Victorian women at the hands of men. Australia has been struggling with an epidemic of gender-based
But like I said, those 9 women who were killed by women, right? What are you going to do about that?
violence. According to the Counting Dead Women project, 31 women have been killed throughout the country since the beginning of this year. Last year, a total of 64 women were murdered.
Oh, really? So I showed 60 there. They said 64. So in half a year, they've reached the halfway point. So it hasn't really increased, has it?
And individual stories that have emerged in recent months have been horrific. Last month, 5 women were murdered by a man armed with a knife at a shopping.
So 5 of these women were murdered by one man. So see how it works, guys? They find one rogue guy and then they use it for all the other men. And know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of this case where this woman stabbed a 3-year-old to death, and she's doing the exact same thing. She's roaming around with a knife. It's hard to see there, but that's a knife in her hand, right? Let's see if they show it here.
Thrift store where police say she stole 2 knives, then briefly stops into Bins and Things before walking into Giant Eagle.
So here we have a woman who, of course, murdered a helpless little boy who was only 3, right? At least this guy here is brave enough to tackle adults, right? So notice there's none of this, we've got to stop violence against children from women, right?
Center in Sydney. Last weekend, a mother and her daughter fell victim to gun violence in Perth. In another case, a woman with
Gun violence. In other words, they were caught in the crossfire. Notice how it's worded. So people were duking it out with guns and they happened to be in the crossfire. They weren't even the targets, right?
was killed by her partner, who was already facing charges of raping and stalking her, but had been released on bail.
So he was facing charges of it, but he was released on bail. So they had no evidence, right? Exactly. So what if it was a case where he was innocent And he was one of the many, 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 many men being falsely accused, and he went ballistic, right?
Now, Richardson's new role has given a glimpse of hope to many,
Now, this is
but
a lie. Violence against women on the rise, that's a lie. It isn't. It's level at best. And it's not against women, it's against people. It's just few of these people happen to be female.
not all Australians are happy with the announcement. The opposition
Wow. Not everybody in Australia is against the KKK. That's good news.
Liberal Party's Jane Hume has expressed skepticism about its effectiveness, saying the move looked like
You see, even the opposition isn't on men's side. She's skeptical about its effectiveness. So she's actually agrees with it. She just thinks, it's the wrong way to go to demonize men, right? There's your heroes, guys. There's your good women. And I bet there are a bunch of losers there saying that there are good women out there in Australia.
window dressing. Meanwhile, critics on social media say that Richardson's job would be to demonize men and feminize the culture.
Feminize. That just means that men don't get the girl, right? Men don't fulfill their gender roles, which is shit for men anyway, right? Like the guys who say this, they're great for men engaging in this dog eat dog world, man eat man world. For women who don't give a shit about them, they're okay with that. You know, it's like, dude, just don't take my chance of getting, female validation away, right?
Some users have also accused the Victoria state government.
And this is what I hate. It's an absolute joke. Whenever men get attacked by women, it's always just a joke to them, right? Sadly enough, even in my own comment section, I'll get this guy saying, this is a joke. This is a joke. Why is it that when black men are attacked by the KKK, they never say the word joke? This is an atrocity, which is what it is.
Of blaming all men for crimes against women and called for reforms to fix bail laws to keep the offenders.
And look at this idiot. Look at this freaking idiot. He says it's not all our fault. Just take away more of our rights. Fix the bailing laws to keep offenders locked up. In other words, don't give men a chance to get bailed out. Like that guy there that they mentioned, right? He might have been locked up in there due to a false allegation. Strip men of that right. So even when these guys want to defend themselves, they're still attacking other men.
Locked up. Now, while the new position only exists at a state level, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese believes men across Australia have to take responsibility.
Yeah, that one guy who went ballistic, all men have to take responsibility, right? But women do not have to take responsibilities for this child murderer, right? She's just a crazy individual. And there's fake tears, right?
Earlier this month, he called the growing violence a national crisis.
This is indeed a national.
They've got no one. The men have no one in their corner at all.
Crisis, and it's a national challenge. And we're facing this with a spirit.
It's a crisis. It hasn't actually increased from last year, and it's far, far, far smaller than the men who get murdered. But it's a crisis
Of national unity. Today is about who we are as a nation and as a society. We recognise.
I know what you are. You're a bunch of pussy sycophants. Australia is an embarrassment and a blight on the world. I'm just so glad you're in a tiny corner somewhere else, far away from the rest of us, you bloody male losers.
That governments need to act, but we also recognise that this is an issue for the whole of society, not just for governments. We want to change this in a way in which we all have to take responsibility. because violence against women is not a women's problem to solve.
Well, really, really, it's not their problem. So you're basically saying men are a bunch of cotton pickers, right? It's not a problem for women anyway. The violence they suffer is minuscule next to the men in your society, you scumbag. And here you are blaming men, right? Put it to the working class. Boy, Australians are make me puke. And again, look, what a fucking joke, right? It's so funny that your rights are being stripped away from you, Mr. Horse. And of course, you get these freaking idiots. He's got a tough job in a country which doesn't know the difference between men and women. Another woman worshiper, right? Right? Trans women are getting a little female validation, or I should say, female privilege, and that's what's on their minds, right? No, demonizing the whole male population, that's secondary to having a woman have to share space with a man, right? And of course, look at this. Better start training Muslim men, right? Rogers, what's a guy? So some guy sees men being attacked by women. What does he do? He finds another group of men to attack, right? In other words, this has to be satire, another joke, right? Buffoonery, Victoria jumped the shark, right? No one ever mentions how this is just straight up evil and men should be fighting against evil. This whole comment section is a joke, is a bad joke. Jeez, make me puke. Like I said, I'm glad I don't live in Australia or Scotland. I thought Canada was a bunch of wimps, but these guys take the cake. Make me vomit.